to tonight's new episode of Tax Sale Titans. I think it's episode 30. Welcome out. I'm Shade Foray here with Stephen Swenson. And we've enjoyed doing these podcasts every single week, covering a lot of different topics and a lot of different places.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate you guys being with us here tonight. We think we've got some exciting things to talk about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at New York. There's a bunch of tax sales that are coming up over the next 30 to 60 days. So it's worth talking about again. Then we're going to get into why and how do you take on-site photos. This is an important part whenever we're buying structured property, that we get on-site evaluation photos so that we're not bidding on things blind.
Yeah, on-site photos are incredibly important. It's probably one of the fastest ways that you can make a major mistake is it's assuming that information you're looking at is up to date or that it's current. And when on-site photos are really the only way that we're going to know, I would say that it's one of the bigger risks with tax sale investing is just somebody taking that leap and trying to buy without actually knowing what the property is with photos. That tell them they can, that they can use the photos to basically determine what the condition is like, because everything we do at this point is kind of guesswork.
Yeah, exactly. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about New Mexico tax deeds. We're going to look at an upcoming auction, review some property, and also we're going to go over some questions that were left on the YouTube channel. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and please ask them in the chat section, or if you're watching the video, go ahead and ask them there. We love to get questions and love to be able to answer them for you. But before we get started, we want to give you guys a special thanks. Everyone that's on the call with us tonight, we appreciate it. If all of our coaching students and our members and our subscribers, we appreciate you guys coming to us for tax sale training.
Yeah. Whether you're here with us tonight or whether you're catching it by replay, we appreciate your time, and we always look forward to trying to share the best we can with about tax sales coming up here or auctions or information that we think will help you.
Yeah, I mean, we want to help you guys have success with it. So what we're going to do, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about New York. There's a bunch of interesting auctions coming up. We're going to look at a couple of different auctions. One I was looking at, before we got started, and I was actually kind of surprised at how aggressive the bidding was. And we'll get into it and see if there's still some good profit margins. And so, New York is an interesting state.
Yeah, they are. So New York is classified as a tax deed state. Most of the counties offer taxes there at a property. Sorry, their tax sale properties at yearly sales. There are, however, though, a couple places where they have liens. So they offer liens in New York City and Nassau County. And basically, what they'll do is they'll sell. Nassau County is the one county that will sell liens to the public. And New York City basically only offers liens in bulk, to large investment companies. But the rest of the state pretty much, operates as a deed states here. Now, tax liens are issued to the county and held as inventory through the redemption period. But after a 21-month redemption period here, the tax collector can initiate that judicial foreclosure. And the judicial foreclosure is essentially what will send the property off here to auction. So properties are sold by premium bid to the highest bidder. And essentially, something else that makes New York unique is that many of the counties provide photos of the property, current photos. In fact, in many cases, they actually take out signs, in front of the property, and one of the photos will include, the sign in front of the property. It's one of the requirements I think that they have for their listing. But what it does, though, they also sometimes include interior images of properties. If they happen to have access to it, they'll include those interior images as well. And that means that sometimes the most accurate and up-to-date information we get is the stuff directly from the county. And so it's always been one thing that's nice about New York is the fact that we can get more information about the properties themselves than we can in most states.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason we've enjoyed New York. We have a lot of students that have bought a lot of property in New York. Now, many of the auctions have moved online. Now, there still is counties that are holding on-site auctions, but most of them moved online. Another thing that's happened is there's still some counties that will offer over the counter, but many of the counties have started implementing land banks. So these land banks, they're taking the property that don't sell the tax sale, and the land bank is distributing. So that's kind of something that's unique that's happening within New York. In fact, we've actually gone with realtors when we thought we were going out and looking at on-market deals, and come to find out that they were actually land bank properties, and that's part of the reason why they were selling them for a discount.
Yeah, let me just get this handed off here to you.
Sounds good.
I can't see how exactly we do this here. All right.
Might sit underneath more, probably next to the captions and the questions. Maybe I'm trying to figure it out.
I don't know why they go and move all this stuff here, trying to make it. I don't know if they're trying to make it easier to use here, but it certainly doesn't seem like it's making it easier here.
I'm trying to. Oh, share. Right next to the camera is a share button. You see that? The mic camera share. Does that work for you?
Uh, not to hand it over.
Huh. I don't know.
Let me just look. I mean, it can't be this hard here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Give remote control.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. I think that did it right. Now that
Can you
should.
see my screen?
We should be able to here. Hold on, let me.
Because now my little, oh, there it is behind it. Okay. This is, sorry about this, guys. They changed everything on us. Hopefully you can see my screen, because I
Oh, you know
can't.
what? Hold on. Let me turn off sharing here on my end. For some reason, that does not seem to help here. Let me. Now, how about you try? Can you share now?
No, I don't have any ability at all to do anything. The share button is like all blacked out.
Oh, there we
We're
go. I mean, I'm
we
making you the
can't.
presenter. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. That should do it.
Yeah, that looks more normal. All right. Sorry about that, guys. We're trying to figure out this new system. It's not quite as easy as the old one. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about New York, and we're going to look at a couple of different deals. Now, the first of these deals, I don't know what to do with it. In fact, if you guys can think of what you could do with these three different church properties, let us know. I'm kind of interested, but I would think that it would probably be better to convert it, but maybe, maybe some church would go in there and take it. But I almost think some type of nonprofit, because it almost looks like there could be homes or something attached to it, or like living space.
Yeah, these are pretty big buildings that sold for fairly low prices here compared to what they're assessed at. So this property sold for what, 80,000 or so, 80, 90,000?
Yeah, 88,000.
And it sold for 88,000. What were they valuing at? Was that 400 about?
Yeah, about 400.
Is it about their assessed value on it? But they're humongous in terms of their size and their square footage. You know, they're big buildings. And I don't know. Yeah, I think they're not all churches. I mean, some of them are churches here, but I think I can't imagine that they're all just church open space for church. They've got to be used for something else.
Yeah, you can see one thing they do is provides a few notes. you know, Previously used as a church, being sold with the connected two-story brick building on St. Agnes as well. And you can and an attached garage on this lot. But you can kind of see, there's one of the properties, there's the other one, and then here's, the big property itself. But I just thought whenever we see these kind of properties, it's kind of interesting. I'm interested to hear what somebody's going to do. And one thing we were talking about, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago, right after the auction happened with our coaching students, is it looks to be that these were different buyers, and they're all kind of connected together. You can see how big it is.
Yeah, that is one thing that's kind of interesting is that all three of these properties, are connected essentially. It's like they're kind of all part of the same campus or church grounds here in a way, but they were all bought by separate buyers, and so most likely here the properties, if they've been used together up to this point, they'll end up being used separately now, and so I'm sure they'll have different uses now.
Yeah, this one ended up selling for 63, and this is the one that we were kind of wondering if was some type of living space. At least I kind of did. And you can see this property right over here, I believe, is attached to it as well.
It looks like a Big house.
Yeah, so I think there was kind of a big church, but that's when I'm trying to think what you could use it for, a rehab center or some type of maybe even nursing home. I guess it is kind of two-story, that might not work as well. But, I kind of wonder if you could refurbish it because it is kind of a cool looking building in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, and it must have a fair amount of square footage. I mean, it's got to be large because it looks like, it looks pretty big, and it looks like it's a lot of space. Does it have a square footage number anywhere on there?
We might have to go to the county because you can
Yeah.
see the year built 1950. And here you can see some of the other lots that are connected to it. So, it's got 160 feet of another lot. This was used as a school.
Oh yeah, so it must have a number of rooms. It probably has quite a bit of space.
Yeah, and this was the other one that was attached to it as well. It sold for 65. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. I'd love to hear what you guys. So you can see kind of the structures here. It's this big huge building here. Then it was this right here, and then it was this right here.
60,000 is not very much to pay for buildings that big, and you look like they could be used. I mean, some of these buildings look like they're still being used, for things. That condition overall is not too bad, on these. I mean, they look like that they've been cared for most all of their life. Because if they hadn't, they wouldn't even be this good. Oh yeah, there's a for sale sign on. Is that one of the properties? Was that across the street?
No, that's right here. But
Interesting.
you can see that they may have been vacant for 4 or 5 years now. I'm kind of wondering because you can see here's August 2019. If we go right ahead, then we can see that we're back up to April 2026. So this is just as of a month ago. But
Yeah.
somebody's taken a risk. You can see that they've done some type of repair right there, trying to keep any type of issue on. But it's not really kind of the property that we would focus on, but it is kind of interesting to see these type of properties, especially when they sell for pretty cheap.
Yeah, well, and at that price point, I don't think it would be very hard. I mean, if you paid 60,000 for the property, uh, I don't think it'd be that hard to monetize that property in a lot of different ways. Whether it is renting the property out to others, or whether it's selling the property, even at the price points they paid for the properties, I think selling them would be very easy. Because they could sell them for low prices if they want, and really what's interesting about a property like that is just all the different potential uses you could have for it, and all the different ways you might be able to make money on the property here by renting it out, and having it used in that way.
Yeah, this isn't that great of that great of property at all. But you're looking at a property you picked up for under 14,000. You know, they have an assessed at about 94. I think if you were to, you know, rehab this property, clean it up, maybe you put 10 grand into it, so you're into it 25 grand, it's going to sell for 100, 125, but you can also rent it for around, 1300 to 1500 bucks a month. So here we can see this was from a couple of years ago. It was still being lived in at that time back in 2021. So I guess that was, it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
But
I mean, yeah. So just 5 years ago, it was being lived in and it got picked up for 14,000. Yeah, I mean, you figure that if you bought it for the 14,000, you put 10,000 into it, so you're into it at 25,000. This is the kind of property that just renting it out, you could pretty much, it would be paying itself off within a year and a half, under 2 years. In under 2 years, it would certainly be paying itself off. And so that is remarkable just because it has the potential to bring in quite a bit of income, compared to how much they're into it. I mean, for a $14,000 property that can bring in roughly probably $1,400 a month, that's remarkable.
yeah, in fact, there's kind of a little trailer park over here that comes through this side and along through there. But, so there's kind of trailers within the area. And, you know, I would imagine that there's probably some rental trailers within here as well. So I think it could be, especially, it could be an opportunity that you could just turn around and flip. I mean, they picked it up for 14 grand. Even if they turn around and sold it for 35 grand or 40 grand, you could still make a quick flip on it without doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, when you buy it that cheap, you've got a lot of options there, and yeah, they do have that option where they can fix stuff if they want it, and uh, the real value of the property. Well, so you could turn around and probably make 20,000 on it, if you wanted just in your purchase of it, or you could look to try to turn the property into a long-term rental and see if you can monetize that because it has the potential to bring in about 20,000 a year. So compared to to what you paid for it to its value, I mean, really, it has quite a bit of income potential for a property. All those properties do as well. The ones that are valued at 120,000 or so, but can rent out for 1,500 a month, they have more income potential, than well, they have more income potential than the value of the properties would suggest.
Yeah, this one ended up selling for 35,000. I kind of wondered, why they paid a little bit more for it. They're showing it's valued at around 100 grand. But when I was looking at some of the similar homes out here within the area, I think that this could be a little bit underassessed. But it's kind of interesting when you see some properties that you get a couple people that, and part of that may have to do with, you can see some newer siding on it.
Yeah, they look like vinyl windows from here, and also
Yeah, I
that
was thinking
outer
that too.
outer door. Yeah, like so somebody went through and did a remodel on the property and installed new windows and stuff on it. So it's probably been updated or has like newer stuff and at least much updated from its original build date. These are probably things that happened in the last 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. They couldn't quite go up the street to get the street view of it. That would have been nice if we could. Now here's an auction that they didn't have a lot of properties and the bidding was pretty aggressive. And so when I first looked at these, usually we don't see properties sell for more than 100 grand in many of the New York counties. Now, there's exceptions to that. We've seen in Syracuse and some of the bigger cities where it's got a little bit more competitive. But I thought this was kind of interesting. I mean, you can see this piece. I couldn't believe how much the land was selling for. And when you look into property values in the area, it makes a little bit more sense. But that one sold for 76,000.
Oh, it didn't sell, it had an opening
Oh,
bid, right?
yeah, they didn't get a bid. That makes sense. Now I was like, man, because I didn't look into them, but I thought, you know, this
So
one
even
right here.
even for a condo though, for 300,000, that first one is like 329 is quite a bit for for just a regular condo unit.
Yeah, yeah, it is quite a bit. Let me go ahead and click on it.
It must be pretty good, highly valued properties there.
Yeah, yeah, I think we should look more into it. You can see, that it's a two-story, built in 1987. It's 1,600 square feet, two-bedroom, two-bath. They say that it's occupied, and they do provide us some photos. Now, one thing we talk about condos a lot with our students, with condos, that's kind of the one exception. We're going to talk about doing on-site evaluations here in a minute. This may be the one type of exception, especially if it's an inside condo, where we're not going to do a on-site evaluation on it. But here we can at least get an idea of the door and where it's located. It's probably this story and this up story here.
Yeah, well, and these images from the sale, maybe some of the better images we could get. They might be new enough here for us, and it wouldn't necessarily tell us a whole lot. And how close can we get there? That's
It's going to be back end here, I believe,
Yeah, so we could send somebody by if we wanted,
or
to go by it.
could be over here on this side actually. As I'm looking at it, that's more of the color of it.
Yeah, what is nice though is that we can get a view here for what the neighborhood is like, in that area. It does kind of look like, yeah, real estate values are pretty high there, because you've got nice properties. That's a nice property too.
Yeah, well, you can see all of these townhomes within here. This one right here. So it's worth. Here's one. This isn't the exact one, but it's right next to it, and it's the same two-bedroom, two-bath. So they're valuing it at 837,000. This one here is only a one-bedroom, one-bath. And it's smaller, but in the same park area, or it's in the same, building complex that, sold for 522. So, picking it up at 329,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But when you're looking at a property value and let's say it's worth 800,000, well, that's where it starts making a little bit more sense as to why somebody would pick this up, especially knowing that they're not going to have to worry about the things that we worry about the most, being the foundation, being the roof. Really, it's just going to be rehabbing the interior.
Yeah, which you've got a limited amount of square footage on it, only 1,600 square feet that you would need to do that with. And there's a lot of potential profitability built into the property if that's what they're selling for. If you've got properties they're selling in excess of 600,000, then there's quite a bit of profitability. And it makes sense as to why they would pay 329 for it. Yeah, especially if it's worth double that, then that
Oh,
absolutely makes sense.
it's worth even more than double because I mean this one here is just the one bedroom. Here's the two bedroom that's pretty much the exact same unit within the complex, and they're all valued at over 800 grand. They didn't have all of the units, but any of these ones that are, the two bedroom, two bath, they're all valued over 800 grand. So even if they put in, $100,000 into it, or let's say, they're at 329, and let's say they put $70,000 rehabbing the interior, that's reasonable. You could do a decent job with when you're not worrying about anything other than the interior of it. They're into it 400 grand. They sell it for 800 grand. That's additional $400,000 worth of potential profit on it.
Yeah, it's still a chance there to double up their money, and that's a lot of profitability, especially for a condo. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. This next one didn't get a bid on it.
Oh, really? At 556, huh? No bid.
Yeah.
And this one is a
Yeah.
house.
It's this house right here. So you got a two-car garage. You can see part of it over here. This photo is from back in 2022, and it looks like they were doing construction on it at the time. You can see where they put this. Maybe they just poured you know, a new driveway. You can see paint buckets and everything. So my assumption is back in 2022 they were doing some type of rehab on it. Here you can see the construction vehicles.
Yeah, it does look like they've got at least painters there. The exterior paint on it kind of looks new too. 1 million, 1.1 million. So at 500,000, it didn't even get a bid, but it's valued at double that. Uh, so really, there's quite a bit of profitability in this one as well, especially if it just went through a remodel already and is valued this high. 3,700 square feet. It's a pretty big house. A 7-bedroom house.
Yeah, so I mean Redfin's given it 1.17, and it's given over $1 million. So, they're both of them are saying it's worth over a million. Redfin is closer to 1.2. And I was kind of, I mean, but that's a lot of money. But there might not have been an investor in this auction that was willing to go ahead and fork that. Now we'd have to get some better on-site evaluations. But what we can see here from the county, it looks like there was somebody currently living in the property, and you can see that, it looks like it's been repainted.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, I mean,
not.
half price, it makes for a good purchase. I mean, uh, it's hard to find deals, that you can get much better than that for houses that are in good shape. It's hard to get a house for less than 50% of value if it has a tremendous amount of value and if it's in decent shape. And that's kind of the story with this one, where
Yeah.
it's in decent shape and it has a tremendous amount of value. This one would be one that would be worth picking up. You could double up your money on it. And yeah, we haven't even looked to the inside yet, but it does look like they've already put work into the inside. It doesn't look like the condition is bad. It looks like it's actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see the estimated from 1.1 to 1.3. And, and looking at the photos, I wonder if those could be, renters. Maybe it turned into a rental property. Maybe they could be the owners, but overall it was the upkeep of it was pretty good. So I was surprised, even though it's a ton of money, that they didn't get any opening bids. But I mean, even look at that lot ended up selling there for 116,000.
Yeah, that is a lot. I can't tell how big it is, but it doesn't look like it's humongous or anything.
I didn't look into it. It's only, look at that. This is an example of a bad deal.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
paid how much for it? They paid 116,000 for this property, and it's only assessed at $2,000.
4,900.
What? Oh, yeah, that does not seem. That seems, and it's only 0.11. It's only like a tenth of an acre.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looks like it's on a paper road too.
Yeah, it does kind of look like
You
that.
see the road ends right there. So
Oh yeah, it is on a paper road. That's a terrible purchase.
I hope they're not listening to us, but I don't know what you were thinking with this. I mean, who knows if it's buildable? You can see some of these lots, at least at one time, were buildable, but you've got to create a road to it, and which whenever we see something like this, especially in an area where property values are high, some of these land have high property values, 70, $80,000, $100,000. So seeing, something like this, even the county says it doesn't have access to it.
Yeah, I mean that would
Wow.
be the major red flag. There is right there on the county record. They basically tell you that that it's landlocked, and yeah, that's just a lot of money to pay for a tenth of an acre landlocked property.
Yeah, in fact, I'm so embarrassed I don't want to show the buyer's name again. I'm embarrassed
Yeah.
for him. This one started up at 589,000 but didn't get a bid. But here's a home right here that sold for 357,000. Let me delete a couple of these. It's this home right here.
Oh, and so 519 is what they estimate the value at.
Yeah.
Wow, they got a steal on this one too because they probably picked this property up for half the value as well.
Yeah, close to it. You can see they're valued at about 672. And so, they picked it up for about half of the property value. It needs a little bit of work, but you can see how somebody can look at this from an investment standpoint, especially if you got the capital to do it. Where, I pick it up for 357. Let's say I put 100 grand into it. Maybe I even do a little addition, like a garage or something like that. And now I turn around and I sell it for 700,000. I mean, at 672, I think if you were to do a little extra with it, you could probably, get a nice rehab because it's kind of the smaller home on the street as well.
Yeah, that is interesting that way.
You can
I
see
mean,
how people have come in and re-updated all of these homes because it just makes sense to do so because the properties have good value.
yeah. I mean, really, all those houses look like they've been updated, at some point here, and that one would be a good candidate for it. You could certainly increase the value even by a bit as well. That they stand to be able to double their money on that property plus probably.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think even after putting in some serious money to rehab it, you would still make between 200 to 300,000 on it, which is a lot of money to make on one deal. You know, so even though it's a more expensive deal and you're going to need the cash to do it, if you do have the cash like this, these are the type of deals that could be worth focusing on, where we can see some current photos so we know what we need to take care of it. We can go out there and have an on-site inspection done and then look more into the market value. This next one ended up selling for 386. It's kind of a little bit weird house, and you can see that it's really, it almost looked like it was kind of built and then never moved in. But I was wondering if you could take a pressure washer to it, because and really
Yeah,
clean it up.
yeah, kind of. It does look like it. Looks like the forest is reclaiming it.
But I wonder if it's ever been lived in.
It is kind of weird, how it doesn't have a driveway and it doesn't have
Yeah, brand new. I mean, not brand new. It's been sitting there for a little while, but you know, you can see this is a newer construction home.
Oh,
I
look at
didn't
that.
see. I didn't know it had interior photos. I didn't get that far
That's
into it.
interesting, though.
Look
Yeah,
at
I mean,
that. They didn't finish it. No
yeah,
lighting up there.
it's never been lived in.
No, somebody probably 5 or 10 years ago started building it and didn't finish. That's my guess. Maybe it's been somebody was rehabbing everything.
At least the way that it looks kind of in the back, like it looks like a new construction, like like they haven't built any of the, any of your decks or anything off the back. Yeah, it does kind of look like it's missing things though. That's interesting. I wonder if it's ever been lived in.
Yeah, I don't know. Look at the stickers on the window. Oh shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it is like new stuff. Like yeah, all of it looks.
And you can see that they have brand new windows in there. So either they, the toilets not even have the top. Either they didn't finish it, or they did some type of major rehab on it and didn't finish it,
Yeah,
which
that's
could have
interesting.
been. Now I know a lot more about it. It even makes a little more sense why they paid for it. The county's only valuing it at 613, but they don't have any of the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage, and oh, look at that, built in 2002 and then 2016. Oh, that's
No,
2016 square feet. Sorry.
so okay, so it was built in 2002, so it probably did have people that lived in it for a while.
Yeah. Look at that. Not even a front.
Yeah,
Like
like not even front
there's not even
steps.
steps there. I almost wonder if this property's been sitting vacant for 20 years.
That's
I
yeah,
don't know.
it kind of looks like it.
That's a weird one. Well, it ended up selling for 386, and I think that it's worth quite a bit more than this. I mean, we were looking at some of that little house right there that was worth 670, and that was, half the size of this home, and this home is pretty close. It's located in the same town.
Interesting.
So I think once you finish that up, you put a driveway, I think you could be in the 800,000 range for it.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's really
not, but close to
I
it.
mean, if you could clean the place up and then you could finish the outside landscaping and entry things, it would really go a long way towards making the home seem quite a bit more inviting. Oh, it's got a basement there to it as well. That's rare.
Yeah.
It looks like more than a crawl space. It looks like it's full height.
Maybe I wonder if there was somebody who's working business out of it or something. Anyway, kind of interesting.
Yeah, those are interesting results.
Here's an auction that was taking place this last month. There was a bunch of land in here that sold for pretty cheap. I think I was looking at this property a little earlier, and I don't know if this is a good deal or not. Would have to look more into the market value, but I do like, even though this was from, let's see, was sold in 2020, so these photos are 6 years old. So a lot can change in 6 years, obviously, but I do love, when you can at least get an idea of what it looked like, 5 years ago by looking at photos like this.
Yeah, well, it's always a bonus. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we always we'll check Zillow and Redfin, just because sometimes one of them will have pictures and the other one won't. But it's nice whenever we can get them because they're usually give us a better idea what's going on here with the property.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a bunch of land in here that sold for pretty cheap. One other, I'll kind of flip this back over to you here in a second. Sold for 1,000. Very well could be buildable. 3,000 on that one. valued at 15 grand. It's got some decent size to it too. But this auction right here, this is actually an area that Shade's been to before, and we actually have investors that are buying property within Albany. There's there all of these homes like this that used to not be worth fixing up, and that's part of the reason why that they were kind of in this condition they are. Well, all of these homes now, it is become profitable, and they can sell for enough money that people are rehabbing, doing complete rehabs on an old home like this. And there's incentives as well that allow you within New York to fix up older homes like this.
Yeah, they certainly they do have a lot of properties like this, and the value on them is good enough to justifies fixing up a lot of these old properties, which is why they're being kind of kept. In fact, in a lot of cases, what you'll find with these properties is owners have already gone in many cases and gutted the properties down to down to just studs. And so, the properties are ready for rehab, or in some cases, they've already have rehab, so that have been partially done on them. But they have a lot of properties. Some of this stuff, we see properties like this sometimes in the land bank there as well. Uh, it wouldn't surprise me.
That one's pretty dirty.
Yeah, well, all these are they look like they are in.
Well, and you see, I mean, we would never even bid on a property like this in a certain market. But you can see how people are willing to pay up for these because Albany is just killing it right now as far as the real estate's concerned, and it makes sense to even take a old home like this, add new sheetrock, fix it all up, because they're selling for high enough that people are still making big profit margins off of doing these type of deals. So that's one thing that's kind of interesting is in some areas, it's never going to be worth buying a home in this type of condition. But if the property values are going up, that's where people are willing to pay 40, 50, $60,000 on a home like this, where they may need to put in another 150 or 200,000, but it still gives them the opportunity to make a couple hundred grand on the back end after getting all of that done.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can figure out how to throw it back to you.
Oh, so
I think if you hit the control button and then go shade.
Yeah, actually, so what I did was oh, there we go. Take remote control. Actually, so what you actually have to do is if you see my name, you see the dots next to my name under people. If you click on that, then underneath there you can make presenter, and that's what you want to do is click on make presenter.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Hopefully I can get it back to you. So I can, if I have a control button, I can hit
And I don't think
and
that see, and it's not taking control. I think that's something different. Or at least it doesn't seem to change anything here for me. I think what you want to do is if you can see the people like the organizers, like if you can pull up the people and you see me, you can click on the dots next to my name there, and
oh my goodness. I hope I can get this back to you because I don't see any
okay, go
dots
to the
next to your
part where it
name.
says people. You see where the people like? Can you see where we've got everybody on the webinar?
Oh, okay. Let me see.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so go and you find me, and then the dots next to my name there,
Okay. Okay. Give remote control. Send chat
or,
message.
or make presenter.
How?
Actually, I can make myself the presenter.
Yeah, because it doesn't have the ability. If I click on those dots, it just shows.
Oh, no worries. I think we've got it.
Okay, cool. Sorry about this, everyone. Trying to figure out this new system.
Well, yes, and eventually we'll get it here. It's different, but I think we can make it work. Yeah, on-site photos. Let's talk just a minute here about on-site evaluations because this is one of those areas where if you're not careful, you can make a lot of mistakes. It's also never probably been easier than it is now to find people that are looking to do this type of work. And so one of the issues we've always had, and of course, if you're looking at tax sale investing, one of the things that you've thought about is being an out-of-state investor in real estate. And it's possible to do now. It's something that's actually pretty easy to do now with all the different online resources that exist. But when we're preparing for a tax sale, it's tempting sometimes to use online information in order to determine the condition of a property. And the problem is that that information is just not correct. We always have to perform on-site evaluations. So as out-of-state investors, rather than going there ourselves, obviously, we can hire somebody to go out there and take photos of the property that can help us determine, what the condition currently looks like with the property, and if there's things that we need to be worried about. What kind of condition is it in? How much work is it going to need? Because we're going to use the information we get from the photos in order to kind of set our max bids if we're going to end up bidding on the property.
Yeah, in fact, it doesn't happen very often. I can only think of a couple of times in the last 15 years, but I can think of students that, came to us and bought a property, without getting an on-site evaluation. Well, did you get an on-site evaluation? No. Did your coach or did we tell you to? Yes. And we were able to help them with the situation as best as we can. Luckily, they didn't pay a lot for it, but you always have to have an on-site evaluation. Like Shade said, there's so many opportunities. There's so many different ways that you can find people that isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg to send out there. It's worth it to spend 50 or 100 or even $200 if they've got to drive past a lot of properties to get photos of those properties. That extra little upfront money is going to save you in the long run from making a serious mistake and losing big money.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain costs you just can't really avoid, and so you're going to have to spend money in order to determine what the current condition of the property is. It's one of those things you just can't avoid because the risk is too great. The risk is too great for making a mistake on that. The information that you need to obtain is too important. And so, hiring people though has never been easier. Like Steve was saying, there are a lot of ways that we can find people to do this. There are a lot of people on classified services that are looking for work like this that they can do. So that's one easy way that we found here to find people. There's actually services that go out and take photos of properties now, that are popping up and they're usable. And so that's something else that has started to become more common. Um, there's a number of places that you can hire. We like to place listings in classified services there in the area because you tend to get people that are already looking for work in classified areas. And so, and what's also nice is that in our listing, we can pretty well give them the information that they need in order to determine if they're interested in doing this kind of work. And usually they can determine that just fine, and we can provide the list, all of the addresses and instructions here for them that will simplify their job a little bit and help them understand what we need from them. But lots of different potential people it could be. If you already have been working in an area, that makes it that much easier because you may already have people in place, like like somebody handling the landscaping and the grass cutting, or somebody kind of like a handyman you could hire to do this. Anybody that's local to the area there could be a good resource for you, and essentially they kind of end up being the first team member that you start to bring on for that project.
Yeah, I mean, hiring from the classifieds is usually going to be the cheapest. In fact, on our weekly webinar, we teach about how to geo map those properties and create the route and send them a Google route where they'll take them from one property to the next so that we can determine how much we're willing to pay them because we know how many miles it's going to take and how long it's going to take. There is an advantage if we can find a good handyman because we can say, okay, we're looking at buying these properties, and if we are able to pick one up, you've got somebody already on the line that can go out and change the locks, that can start cleaning it up, that can start removing it, removing stuff off of the property and helping you decide what your strategy is going to be, include taking interior photos as they're going through that. And so if we are able to find a good handyman, we'll use them even if it costs us a little bit more, because also they're going to have a level of expertise. They're going to be able to look at things like the roof or the foundation or what they're able to see from the cover. I always say, in this case, we do have to judge the book by the cover many times, unless we're looking at auctions like in New York, where we can see interior photos, and that just gives us additional information. But that's really what we're trying to determine, is we're trying to get as much information as we can before making an investment. And with structured property, we just can't judge the online evaluation. Just like we were looking there, we saw some of those street views could be 5 years old, and a lot can change within 5 years or even 5 months.
Yeah, in fact, we need to make sure that we're getting new pictures here of the property. Now, hiring somebody also can be somewhat confusing for them a bit. And we've made the mistake before of not providing adequate instructions to the people taking the photos. And when that happens, the results are generally not good. And when I say, the results are not good, it meaning that a lot of times you don't really get photos back that are all that usable for helping you determine the property condition. And so they end up being a total waste. And so one of the things that you can do is educate the person that you're going to have take the photos a bit. Anything you can do to help them understand what you're going to be using the photos for, and kind of the role that they'll be playing here in this process will help, because uh, they need to understand how important the images are, and the fact that you're using these images in order to set the value of the property. And so this is just a little like a guide, something that we send or attach to emails that we're going to send out to drivers or somebody that's going to go and take a look at properties for us, because it can provide some instructions here about exactly what it is that we're doing and what we need from them. And so, it essentially says, hi, I'm a real estate investor who's targeting homes, in this area. Um, you know, I am out of state, unable to visit properties in person to evaluate the condition. And, I'll be using the photographs you take to identify potential issues with the homes and to estimate the cost of repairs. So your photos are going to play a crucial role in selecting properties and determining how much, I'll pay for them. And we've got some examples there of images, but we let them know here that we need at least 3 to 6 images of each property, and from different angles if we can, to let us know what's going on here with the property, and from different angles, and to help us see other things as well, things like the neighborhood and what their neighbors are like. I mean, you know, the neighbors are important, and that you can't really pick your neighbors. You can only pick the properties that you're going to buy. And so in some cases, if there's neighbor properties that are bad enough, it can scare us off from properties altogether. But those are some of the things we can determine from the images that somebody like this takes.
Yeah, 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 exactly. In fact, when we're talking with our members, we recommend even putting some of the requirements there within the listing. So if you're going to be doing a Craigslist listing, looking for a potential somebody you could hire to take photographs, well, we may say we're going to need photos of, we're going to need 3 to 6 photos of each property, including, the sides, the front, the roof, and so even when they're calling you, they've got an idea of what they're going to need to do. Like Shade said, we've had times, especially in the past years ago, and it's the reason why we educate the person taking photos, and even sometimes we'll offer them a bonus if they are able to take real good photos. Hey, if you do a great job and the photos turn out the way that I hope they will, I'll give you an extra $30 on top of it, or Venmo it to you. We want to incentivize them to be able to take good photos, because we've had some where it was completely useless for us. So they went out there, and it's almost like they just drove past as quick as they could and take a photo. If they have the ability, even taking a short video can be incredibly helpful for us as well. Almost everyone's going to have that available there on their phone. And so really they just need phone and transportation, and they can go take photos for you and email you that information. So it's just become so much easier now to be able to do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do to kind of go above and beyond. Like, for instance, videos are incredibly helpful. Um, but the other thing may need to help them understand is uh, a like a property information system, for the photos. In other words, it's not just enough to take a photos of the properties that we need, but we need some way to identify what that photo is an image of. To kind of identify what I mean, because you take a lot of photos, it can get pretty confusing about what you have images of and what you don't. And so we also try to implement some type of a system that allows us to know what the next series of pictures are going to be for. And it's usually something tied to something like the a property number, auction number, or like the parcel number. Something like that, will help us understand a little bit better about what's going on here. And so we use property information boards or images all the time, or we might just write down numbers on a piece of paper that help us kind of identify what the next batch of pictures is going to be, an image of. But we need the individual taking the photos to be kind of familiar with what we're talking about here, because they're the ones that are going to kind of help us keep track of this and make sure it's organized.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In fact, sometimes we'll even include a photo of the property. So we'll just open up a Word doc, we'll put the address down, and then we'll take a screenshot of the photo from Google Street Views and include that so that they know what the house looks like. Sometimes, if the address isn't very clear, we've got back photos that are of the house next door, and so we found it pretty easy to be able to do is just to open up a Word doc, put the address there, take a screenshot, put the photo there on the Word doc, and have a list there that we can send them in a PDF. So that as they're driving and looking at the address, they can look there at the photo and make sure it's the right home. That way you don't get photos of the house next door and you're doing an on-site evaluation on the house next door when it's actually, you're doing an evaluation on the wrong home.
Yeah, providing a photo of the property can be incredibly helpful for the driver, just because there are lots of places where finding addresses is not quite as simple as it is today for us. And oftentimes now we can just listen to the phone and it will tell us and point us to exactly where the property is at. But we don't always have those capabilities. In fact, sometimes we lose internet access in general trying to get out in some of these areas to get information about these properties. Anything that the driver can provide to us here is going to be very helpful. And at the same time, we also understand that this is not something they can spend too much time on. And so it's a matter of trying to make the most of your money, trying to make sure that you're sending them out there on good properties to review, and also enough properties so that if you have some redemptions occur, you suddenly don't have any inventory. You want to have enough properties you're looking at here so that you can account for some of those redemptions that do occur. Um, the other thing is just having them focus on any damage they see specifically. That can be very helpful too, because if they get there and they see, they notice certain problems with the property, they can take an extra image or two of those, and that will help us kind of identify that there is an issue there that we need to worry about, or we would need to account for. And honestly, some properties, it's almost impossible to get images of any of this stuff. There are some properties, my least favorite properties there to go and look at are the ones that have, there are some properties that have, that are sitting very far back here on driveways, that could be a half mile to a mile long. You just cannot get into an area where you can see anything about the property here, without basically driving up their driveway. And so yeah, we run into properties all the time though, and providing something like a photo of the property can save us a lot of headache there. It can save the driver a lot of time in helping them identify the right properties, and it can save us the headache of having a driver take an image of the wrong property, because we've had that happen before as well, where we're preparing for a sale under the assumption that the property we're looking at is actually something different than what it is.
Yeah. One thing we'll also um, talk to the photographer or the route runner for us about is looking for any homes that are vacant that might have open doors or windows. If the home is vacant and the front door is open, that is a major risk, on that particular property. Or if we see that a bunch of the windows are broken on an older home or on a property and it looks like it's been vacant. Now, if the window's down and there's a car in the driveway, that's not something that we're going to be worried about. But if it is vacant, be sure to, look for any of that information. And if the home is vacant, we should be able to spend a little bit more time there as well, or they should be able to take a couple of more photos because we're not essentially crouching on anyone that's living in the home right then.
Yeah, that's actually something else that's kind of nice to tell them, ahead of time, is whether from the images you see and what you have, the information you have, whether you believe the property to be vacant or occupied. And again, it doesn't have to be right every time, but just a kind of a guess can help. But yeah, the quickest way that you can lose a lot of money in a tax sale is to buy a home sight unseen, or based on old information, that's online that's no longer relevant or no longer applicable to the property. It's a very easy way to make a huge mistake. So the easiest way around that is just to make sure you don't buy anything, without at least having some pictures taken of it ahead of time, just to make sure that you don't make one of those types of mistakes because things can change overnight with the property. Properties can burn down, trees can fall over. So many different things can happen that would affect the value that we just can't risk it. That the property is still in the exact same shape it was in the time from the photos that we saw.
Yeah, I must not change that slide. We're going to be looking at New Mexico now. Hopefully, the
Yeah,
next slide will talk about New Mexico.
yes, it is. Yes, we're going to be looking at New Mexico. New Mexico is classified as a tax deed state. So they basically wait out a redemption period here, where the county will then foreclose on properties and offer them up at auction. So most of the counties conduct their sales by oral bids, and in fact, I believe most of them are still in-person sales as well. Um, they use premium bidding, which is like many other states that we've seen. Payments obviously due immediately. One thing that's unique though about New Mexico is their judicial foreclosure is not exactly the same. Mortgages have the ability to survive the foreclosure process in New Mexico. And so that's not necessarily meaning that they're not good opportunities, because there can be, but we do need to account for things like a mortgage. If it's possible, it can still survive. Then we need to check for those whenever we look to buy. We need to basically be aware of any kind of liens against the property, not just government issued liens.
Yeah, in fact, I was doing a little bit more research on it today because we haven't focused on New Mexico, probably for a couple of years. And I was looking into it, and the mortgages, they were saying, at least some of the law firms were saying, they can be wiped out during the quiet title action, but there's no guarantee that they will be. And so because of that, it's definitely something we're going to look into. Now, the good thing about tax sale properties is most of them aren't going to have mortgages, because if there was some type of bank loan on it, the bank would be informed that the property is going to get sold. And if the bank sees any value in the property, they're going to go ahead and make sure that they get that paid so that they don't lose their investment into it. But in most cases, there isn't going to be mortgages on a property, especially if it's going to the tax sale. So a lot of the properties aren't going to have them. But we need to keep that in mind. So when we're researching Florida or most other states, if there's a mortgage on the property, we don't put a lot of research into it because it's probably already been paid off for an old mortgage to begin with. But if we do see mortgages here in New Mexico, we need to go ahead and check more into those properties, because it could still stick to the mortgage after the sale of it.
Yeah, let's see here. So what we're going to do now is we are going to we're going to take a look at the sale coming up here in New Mexico. It's for Colfax County. Is that right?
Yeah, and one thing as well is that the auction list are all going to go to the state's website. So when the county issues or does a tax foreclosure, then they're going to go ahead and foreclose on the property, and they're going to send it to the state. And so that's where you can actually go to see all of the auctions that are currently taking place at the time.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up their list here.
You just click on right there up at the top, right where it says Colfax. See the link over there, download PDF.
And it looks like it's loading up here for us. Well,
Huh. It's
I
weird.
think anyway. Is there? Yeah, for some reason. Let's see here. Is there another way here?
I've got a download of it. I downloaded it earlier. I could email it over to you.
Yeah, let's try that here. It's kind of interesting here. Yeah, we can start pulling up some of the properties here though
All
on it.
right, let me send it to you quick. Well, one thing, this is kind of mostly what they have are land on a majority of these, but it is kind of interesting to look into. I don't know why the list isn't working, but I just emailed it over to you. And we ended up, most of these you had to look in to find the address, and so we've kind of got them all prepared, the ones that we've looked at. I don't know why their link's not working.
Okay, there we go. Pull over here. Okay, here we go. So let me just enlarge this a little bit here. It's an interesting list style. You know, kind of like the old lists have been here for a long time. So they've got their list rules that are there, and then they have their inventory that will start. And it starts right here. So we've got each one of our properties here. And we can see opening bid amount, you know, for these at, you know, 4,400, 4,500 here. And they have the legal description listed.
Yeah, underneath the simple description, you can kind of see what some of them are on: El Camino, Cheerful Way, you know, Vel Loop. But well, that first one that I did a little research on was number 6, I believe.
All right. Oh yeah. So we've got the property here, which is right here. It's this property. If we enlarge this just a little bit. Number 6. So we can see that yeah, taxable value there 4,700. Actual value this thing is about 15,000. You know, this is a vacant lot, I believe here, and we've got the owner address there. We can see where the owner is located, the site address here.
Oh my
See where
goodness, I didn't even see that till now. Click on that GIS button. I was looking everywhere for them. Oh, it didn't pull up anything, or did it?
it just pulled
Oh,
up
it
this
just pulled up
thing.
the photo. Okay. I was thinking I researched this whole list and had to find where in the bend on this road to figure out which lot it was to do on Google. And I saw that GIS button. I thought, oh my goodness, did they have? Because I looked everywhere, I couldn't find GIS for this county, and so you know that's kind of a little bit obnoxious. But you know, still by looking at the name and kind of what they had, you kind of figure out where the property is located. So you can see
Uh,
it's kind of on this loop right around here.
yeah, you did a pretty good job here. You know, so yeah, we can see it's like it's a second property in on that loop.
Yeah, in fact, if you go and look back at Google and you were to click on just the overhead map, you can kind of see the lot lines, you know, where it says layers.
There we go. So there's our property line there for it. It is right across the street from this Starshine Lodge.
Yeah, and this is actually right up near the ski resorts. So this is all kind of up in the mountains. You know, if you were to kind of scroll up, you can see the ski resort up there to the right.
Yeah, yeah, they've got their lifts right there. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, so that's actually a pretty nice property. We can see a nice lot, and it looks like it's a usable size. Uh, at
Yeah,
least it looks.
all of these I think are in some type of HOA or POA. You know, we can click on some of the comps that are right around this lot.
So 72,000 here. One at 50. This one's 1 acre, and
You know, one thing that's obnoxious about this area is this is that lodge across the way. So whenever we're looking at property and we can't get a street view of it, we'll try to see is there any homes in the area, because as you start looking through the photos, you can many times get a glimpse of the lot across the street or close to it or the one next to it through some of the photos. So that at least gives us a better idea if we can't get some type of on-site photo. So you can kind of see the road down there below and you know the property there to
yeah,
right there to the left.
yeah, that is pretty interesting. But no street side image here. Obviously, I think we've just
I
got dirt roads here, right?
You can go down there and click on it. Some of them did. Some of them do have street views, and some of them don't. Yeah, this one didn't.
Uh,
But that's part of the reason I looked at the home across the street to see if I could get a kind of an idea. Is it semi flat? Is it the middle of a hill? but you can see that the property's valued around 50 to 70,000, pretty close to this particular lot.
Yeah, that is interesting. All right, let's see here. For number 8, property number 8, we're looking at. Let's see what this is.
It's kind of the same thing, very similar. If you go over on the left-hand side, you can click on the land detail and see what size it is. Some of them are going to be bigger than others. So this one's, about what, sixth an
32,000
acre.
square feet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not quite an acre. It's probably 3/4 of an acre or more, a little bit. And I guess so. They don't actually give us the. Can't actually see a map on this one, can we?
And I'll go back to the account summary.
It is not coming up here real fast. Oh, there we go.
Oh, maybe not.
That's right. We've got the other things here I can click on. So we can see the property. So here is the property location right there. This one does have an old street side image here for it, but there's the location here. Let's go to some comps here on it.
And I think this one started at 3,500. I think that you can pick up any of these properties up for close to the opening bid. I wouldn't be surprised if, because it's actually quite a big list.
Yeah, it is a pretty big list. Let me see how many here.
There's over 100.
Yeah, over 138 total actually.
And they only do auctions one time a year. So these are all the property. And one thing that's interesting is I don't think I looked up one of them, and I probably looked up 30 properties, and a lot of them are the same. There's some at the very end of the list that are outside of this this area, this Angel Fire area, but they're all out of state investors. Tons of California, quite a few Arizona, but I didn't see anyone that was local because this is kind of a ski area. This is kind of recreational area, so people were buying these as potential investments. Didn't do anything for it, with it for 5 or 10 years, and just said, hey, I don't want to pay another 10 grand on it, or 5 grand or whatever it is as far as back taxes, and then are essentially kind of walking away with them.
That's interesting. There are a lot of good properties here. I mean, we're looking at number 10 and 11 here. Let me just scroll up. Yeah, so 10 and 11. So 10 has a $15,000 minimum bid amount. Let's click on the information here for it.
The value in this one at 47,000.
Yeah, they are.
So I mean, that was kind of interesting. What's kind of interesting is, there is some correlation to what their opening bid amount is versus the assessed value, but I saw some that were opening at 3,500 that had a $30,000 or $40,000 assessed value. So, I'm not quite sure exactly, what's included within all those property taxes if they've been holding them for more than a year or so. So if I were going to be bidding at this auction, I would go through and evaluate which ones are in areas that properties are selling, and this one was quite a bit bigger at almost 2 acres. And so as you get into the 2, the 4, the 6 acre sizes, they seem to be selling for higher prices.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting too. So the other property pulled up here is this one right here has a low opening bid amount. I think number 11, at least 3,600 opening compared to the 15,000. The value is still decent on it though.
Well, and they're both on the same street. Go back and click on some of the comps. So this is on the same street, that El Camino. So you can see on this particular area, the prices are a little bit higher. So in some areas I saw them where, in kind of the most furthest out, smallest lots, maybe they're around 20 grand. And then as they get up in value, they go, from 30 to 50, and then 50 to 100 to 150 as they get into the 5 or 6 acre size lots.
Yeah, those numbers are as good as you can find with tax sales, anywhere in the country pretty much in terms of like what properties are opening up at versus what they're valued at. In fact, in a lot of these places, there is better potential because there's increased profit. These properties are more valuable than most tax sale properties, and so there is better potential here for better profits.
Well, and one thing that's interesting is that, these lots all seem to have power, water, all utilities right there. In fact, on some of the Google Street Views, you can see the box right there, the power box ready to go to hook up. So, I think a lot of these are newer construction that is coming in, a bunch of newer type homes, recreational homes, kind of within the area of that ski resort.
Yeah, some of these properties are pretty valuable. I mean, this one opens up at 13,000, but the county is saying it's valued at 72,000. Um, and let's see. Yeah, we can see some other ones here. Uh, they're similar for sale for 85,000 here, and there's one of the houses there close
Yeah,
to
in
it.
fact, if you click on the Google Earth, this is right across the street from it. So the Google, I think, has a street view. At least I think that it did.
Yeah, it's a neighbor property here then.
Yeah. That bigger property is actually just kind of up around the bend a little bit, but it's not too far away.
Oh, that is interesting. All these sales at 23, 26. This one right here, starting at 4,200. And yeah, it is kind of interesting how the amounts don't necessarily follow any real formula for values. Like this one, they value it at about 15,000. Opening bid amount on this one is similar to the other properties there that are valued at, much higher than that. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting here where each one of these ones falls, like 36.
Yeah. Well, and looking into some of the comps that are around there, you can kind of see where some of the areas are selling for higher prices, and there's some that may only have an $18,000 assessed value, but they're in areas where the properties are selling for quite a bit more than that. This is actually a pretty big lot. You can see the size of it there.
Yeah, 6.3 acres, on this one. It starts at 25,000, but yeah, it is quite a bit bigger. And we can see here's 5 acres for 124, and yeah, 5 acres there for 125. And so really, yeah, this is probably a $125,000 to $150,000 lot, starting at 25.
Yeah, it's quite a bit higher opening bid amount, but even within there, if these that's a lot, you could probably easily make 50,000 on it pretty easily.
Yeah. Oh, dang. And
You could probably go to look at the couple of the ones at the bottom. Kind of went through
down.
uh, the bottom of the list. So like maybe I think we can go look at the map, but I think 36, 37, 38, something like those. Those aren't located. Those are located outside of this area, outside of this POA.
Yeah, let's see, 136. Let's look at that one and see what that is real quick. So 136 is this one right here. This one actually opens up for $800.
Yeah.
A lot less. Let's pull it up here on the records. And this is valued at 21,000. So the value on it is pretty good here on Lake Street.
Yeah, I've got it where it's located there on Google. And so this is going to be, outside of this big area where all of the other lots were at. In fact, you can scroll up. Yeah, I believe this is close to Eagle Nest, New Mexico. The town's more to the right.
Yeah.
Kind of right there on the lake.
I mean, yeah, considering this starts at $800, very low opening bid amount, considering for properties that are valued at 30,000 plus. It looks like
These other two are homes that are right across the street. So there was only one lot for sale in that little. You can see how small that little subdivision was.
yeah,
So there's only one lot of 35,000, but then there was these two homes that are located right next to them. One selling for 174, and that's probably what, if we were to buy this lot and we wanted to put on and make it into a structured property, we'd probably look at it either bringing on a used trailer or a manufactured home, because you can see that they're selling for, even old ones, a single wide selling for 120.
yeah. There's one valued at opening at 4,000. Looks like it's valued at 16,000 here.
Well, you can see that one's got residential improvement down there and non-residential improvement.
Yeah, it does. I wonder.
You can do street view. Just click back on it again. Just go down and click on the street. You should be able to pull it up. Look to the right, I think. It's this old structure right here.
Oh, this one right here.
No, right there. Yeah. Well, there's two structures. Remember, because you could see there, you could see one was a house and then one was, I don't know if it was commercial. They said non-residential improvement. So, I mean, obviously this is an old junked up house, but I was looking for anything that was outside of the,
Yeah.
and the values of the homes in that area are pretty good. I don't know if it'd be worth rehabbing or not.
Oh, the properties are, I mean, not bad, at least for the money. Most of these have pretty good profitability built into them. Pretty decent properties in general. Yeah, this one has a lot of value. 33,000, considering it's opening up for so low. This one also has residential improvement listed.
Yeah, 29,000. This is a home.
Oh, that's interesting. It doesn't start too high price
No,
wise. Yeah,
you can see that's
comparable here.
right up there, 116. So if you scroll in, you can see it's that little yellow or tan house.
Yeah.
So it's not opening for very much. If you were there locally, I'd probably be one that I would go take an on-site evaluation on and bid on it.
Yeah, I mean, it does start pretty low, such a low amount. That's interesting with these sales. It's a much bigger sale than I expected. I didn't think they would have 130 properties like that.
Well, it has to do with that. If you look at the size of that, I'll bet that there's 10,000 lots. I don't know how many, but there's a lot of lots up there within that ski resort community. And so because there's so many lots, that's what a majority of these properties are, except for 5 or 6 properties at the very bottom of the list. They're all located within this area. And you got to think that there's majority of people are paying the HOA fee, keeping the lot. But because there's so many of them within there, they're just based on the pure numbers, there's going to be a group of those. Let's say they have 5,000 or 10,000 of these lots within that community. There's going to be 50 or 100 of them each year that are just willing to quit paying their property taxes on it, quit paying the HOA fee, and just let it go because they're tired of paying on it. And so I think that's kind of where you see a bigger list like this, is based off the fact that there's so many lots uh, in that community.
Interesting. Yeah, it is a pretty interesting place. Well, great. Let's go through answer some questions here that were questions from YouTube subscribers, and also want to answer any other questions that we have here coming in. Let's see here. Interesting, but I'd like to know how I can access the property auction. Yeah, I wonder which auction they were talking about here. There's so many different auction providers now that
I think it was a New Hampshire auction
oh,
that
was
they
it?
were asking about, but really, we research all of those auctions and put them available on our calendar. Or you could go to New Hampshire and, start looking at all the individual cities. One thing that's unique about an area like New Hampshire is the tax sales are going to be sold through through the cities and towns versus on a county level. So if we are talking about that, it takes a little bit more work because there's so many cities within there. But there is a couple of websites that will post some of those New Hampshire sales on there. So that's really it's gonna take a little bit more legwork if you're looking to do it on your own.
Yeah, let's see. How do you assign a tax certificate safely? Now, I wonder if what they're talking about there is your ability to sell or assign the certificate from one person to another. Like
Yeah.
that is something that you can do. You can sell a lien. You don't necessarily have to wait for it to redeem. Liens can be resold and assigned to other individuals. That is something that can be done. And I think the main priority there is just making sure you get paid for it. Just because again, the lien is still a lien, it's still active and has that power, so that you'll either be able to pursue foreclosure on it or it will redeem. But the main thing is just getting the information recorded so that you can transfer it over.
Well, and looking into the laws within that area. So a lot of the states will allow you to assign a tax lien to another investor, but they may have paperwork. You're going to want to make sure to figure out the exact process within that state, what the county is going to require you to do. So to do it safely, making sure like you're going to make sure you get paid, like Shade said, before you go ahead and issue that. But really making sure that you have the proper paperwork with the individual county and state is going to be the most important thing you're going to need to do.
Yeah. Now, actually, I just realized here I can't see the screen here. Let me just. Oh, hold on. Oh, there we go. Now I can do it. Now I can see people's questions here. Okay. We do have a bunch of questions here I've not been answering here. Let me, okay. Uh, so I've done BPOs for valuation companies and had strict requirements for property photos, similar, let me see here. Yes, yeah, property photos are a pretty big deal. What type of construction is the wood stripes? Are they too old to fix them and need water to be redone? A lot of that stuff, when it comes to the rehabs, in fact, we'd have to go back there and see which image. I wish I could have seen the images here as we were going along. It's terrible here that I couldn't see those because on some of those properties, yeah, they're complete rehabs we were looking at. A lot of the stuff, everything on the inside is gutted. You know, in comparison, there are some of those land bank properties and some of those old properties that are not quite as bad and they have, they're a little bit more salvageable from that one. But yeah, the ones that we looked at there in New York were a little bit rough. And then
Yeah.
Dan was wondering, how do you get rid of that land, like that bad purchase? That one that we were talking about here, where it seemed like they overpaid. That's probably the biggest problem is they just overpaid by so much. I don't know what you can do with it.
Yeah, yeah. Unless they know something that we don't know, you know, it just looked like it was and I don't know if it started out at 100 grand. I wouldn't think so. I don't think you'd have property taxes like that. That means you had two people bidding on it. But why? It doesn't make any sense to me unless the only thing I could think of, and it's probably not the case at all, is if the two property owners that bordered that property for whatever reason wanted the homes, and they got into some type of tiff. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense because it's a small lot and you're talking about a paper road. So would I buy it for $100? Yeah, maybe I'd buy it for $100, but buying it for $100,000, that's a tenth of an acre, that you're going to need to build probably 100-foot road to even access the property through trees, doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you guys had great suggestions for those first properties you were looking at. Some of you were saying indoor gun range. That was a pretty good one, or indoor gym rental. Yeah, Dan was saying it's already handicap accessible, which that is one nice thing about those buildings is they have already had investment put into things like making them handicap accessible. So yeah, they wouldn't have a problem with that. Uh, Private growing school, a bar, rehab center, retreat. All those things are good. Dan is full of good ideas here. Uh, yeah, rehab center or like a retreat center. Any of those would probably work out just great, especially at the price point that they paid for those homes or those for the first three big lots. Any of those ideas would probably be very profitable, for those lots and something to be pretty cool to do with them.
Yeah, in fact, that one church is so long, and I think I looked it up when it first came to auction, and they had some old photos in the inside, and it was a big, huge chapel. But that would work for a gun range or an archery range or something like that. It's going to be long enough that you could do it pretty safely, I would think.
Yeah, a
I
big,
wonder if you keep the sound down too because of the thick brick walls.
yeah, probably. Let's see. I was saying I've heard that maybe 10% of over-the-counter properties can be gems. Any opinion? When it comes to the percentage of over-the-counter properties that are good, um, it kind of depends on the location. I mean, there are some places where they have over-the-counter lists that are just gold. Where a lot of properties on the list are good, maybe even a higher percentage than 10%. There are other over-the-counter lists where they've been fairly picked through, and a lot of the good properties have been taken. And sometimes in those cases, it's not even 10%. It's way under. So they are very area dependent. Um, that's just something we've seen in a lot of places. Everywhere it seems like their over-the-counter inventory varies here. There's some places though that have really great over-the-counter inventory. In some places, the over-the-counter is almost part of how their systems operate, kind of like Pennsylvania, where they have these upset sale properties after these other sales they've conducted, and there can be great over-the-counter opportunities in those places. There are certain states that still have a lot of over-the-counter inventory, but in general, though, many of them are trying to switch over to online auctions, so they have less over-the-counter inventory to start with.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, 5 or 10 years ago, when we were working with our coaching students, we would always get them started with over the counter. And there still is good opportunity. We still do that with some of our students, but if they have any significant amount of capital, we're going to encourage them to look at the online auctions because so many counties, so many areas have moved those auctions online where you were just competing with locals, and so they were always going to have a bunch of over the counter because there wasn't enough people there at the auction to buy all the properties unless it was some big sale or in some big market. And so because of that, there was a lot of over the counter. But as now those counties are taking and putting their inventory online, they're probably going to have somebody that's going to be willing to do an opening bid on it, especially if they're picking it up for 5 to 10 cents on the dollar. And so because of that, there's going to be less over the counter than there was in previous years. Even looking through some of the properties we were looking at before, some of those would have ended up on the over the counter list if it was an on-site auction, but because it's an online auction, somebody's willing to pick it up if they can get it for cheap enough.
Yeah, online auctions are definitely reducing, the total number of over-the-counter opportunities, but it is so area specific that in certain places it's worth looking. It's always still worth looking to see what kind of over-the-counter inventory they have because there are lots of counties that have just had a lot of over-the-counter inventory is just part of how they operate, and they'll always have over-the-counter inventory. And so, yeah, I think it's worth checking out, what's available in every area you go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. We appreciate all the questions. We apologize about trying to figure out this new system, but we're getting better with each one, so we'll get that worked out.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back again here next week.
Appreciate it.